Hi, this is Rabbi Young. Thank you for tuning in to the weekly video email. I have been thinking about this week's parasha for a little while, but I got stuck on the second verse this week. The second verse starts, O Lord, Yud He Vav He, you who let your servant see the first works of your greatness and your mighty hand, you whose powerful deeds no God in heaven or on earth can equal. And I was thinking about not just the context of the verse itself. One interesting thing about this particular verse is that we're acknowledging other gods because there's a little lowercase God here, which acknowledges that other people do worship different gods, but Yod He Vav He is the one whose powerful deeds no other god can equal. That aside, looking at the word for God in Hebrew, at least for God's name, Yud He Vav He, and it's rendered a little differently than we're used to in this particular verse of Torah. Yud He Vav He has different vowels on it than what we usually read. And those of you in my Torah study class have heard me explain this. Those of you who've taken Intro to Judaism have heard me explain this. But I think it's fun and interesting, and I want to explain it to everyone about Hebrew grammar and spelling and how we change the way we spell words for certain reasons. So usually we are used to seeing the word Yod He Vav He rendered like this, with slightly different vowels underneath, as you can see. The reason for this is not because of how God's name is supposed to be rendered, but because of how we as Jews pronounce God's name. Now, the letters Yud, He, Vav are all considered vowels in Hebrew to people who don't use the dots and lines and dashes. To have a word with all vowels is hard to pronounce. Not looking at any of the markings that we put on it, it looks like y, v. And we don't really know how to pronounce it. Some people say it's pronounced like the sound of breath. Yeah. Yeah. Others say it's Yahweh. The fact is, we no longer know how Yud He Vav He is supposed to be pronounced. So what we do is we use a replacement Hebrew word. The rabbis chose the replacement Hebrew word Adonai. Adonai means my Lord in Hebrew. So what you'll notice is there is no d sound apparent in Yud He Vav He. There is no n sound apparent in Yud He Vav He. In fact, they don't belong in Yud He Vav He. However, it's a replacement word, so we give it a little leeway. And the way you know to pronounce it Adonai is by the vowels. We take the vowels of the word Adonai, watch the screen, and we move them down onto Yud He Vav He. And that renders it pronounced correctly. Now, because of funky Hebrew grammar, we actually don't need that extra vowel under the Yud. So it looks like this when we write out Yud He Vav He for pronunciation. Usually. The other way we might render it is with these vowels. These vowels don't come from the word Adonai, they come from the word Elohim. And when we see it pronounced like this, we are supposed to pronounce Yud He Vav He as Elohim, as indicated in the second verse of this week's parasha. Adonai Elohim atah hachilot, etc. O Lord Adonai. And in this case, you see the English is rendered with the word Lord lowercase, so that we don't get confused thinking we're using the tetragrammaton pronounced Adonai, which means my Lord. It does get a little confusing, so if you want a refresher, rewind and watch me again. But the point is not so much what we call God, but how we connect to God. We can use Yud He Vav He pronounced as Adonai. We can use it pronounced as Elohim. We could use it pronounced as Ploni von Ploni if we want to, because the more important thing is not the words we use, but how we connect. I hope that when we connect to God, a God who we believe is more powerful than other gods in heaven and earth, more important than other iterations of God that people might worship. When we really connect to God, we come to a higher level, a higher understanding, not just of God and the world around us, but of ourselves. So this week, as we come back slowly, schools are starting to start, summertime is winding down, and some of us are back from sabbatical. But however you are returning, however you are connecting, however you're studying, I hope you find your connection to God strong and powerful, with greatness and with a mighty hand. Take care. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.